Welcome back, everybody. You're watching Law and Crime Live, and thanks to those of you joining us on the Crime and Investigation Network. We're going to pause our analysis of the Tex McIver murder case in Atlanta, Georgia, to talk about a very important verdict that came down in federal court today. Noor Salman, who was the wife of Omar Mateen, the Pulse nightclub shooter, was acquitted of all charges related to the deaths of 49 people in that nightclub. Now, she was charged with a number of federal counts, including lying to the FBI about whether or not she truly knew about the attack, and in some accusations, whether she played some role in helping plan it. Well, federal prosecutors were not able to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and ultimately that federal jury decided to acquit the wife of all charges. Joining us now on the Law and Crime Network is Patience Carter. She was one of the victims who was in that nightclub when the shots rang out. Patience, thank you so much for joining us today on Law and Crime. Just wanted to start out by asking your reaction to that verdict.
Well, thank you for having me. My initial reaction wasn't shock or surprised. I was pretty sure that this was going to be the verdict. I just think that in that time of hurt and in that place of hurt, everyone was looking for someone to blame immediately. And since the direct shooter wasn't around, we pointed that blame to her. And after looking at the evidence and stuff, it's still not totally clear, but I think the only way for us to move on and to heal is to not focus so much on this and focus on memorializing and keeping the legacy alive of the people that died that night versus someone to blame.
I can understand that. Now, prosecutors in this case said that this case was about what that wife knew, and when she knew it, they said in opening statements, I believe it was, that the defendant didn't pull the trigger, but she did serve as a, quote, green light for her husband. Now, that's the way prosecutors tried to get jurors to buy the charges here. Do you think that that was a bit too much of a reach for the state, or excuse me, for federal prosecutors then?
As far as it being a reach, we don't necessarily know what she knew and when she knew it, and there wasn't enough information provided to prove that she did or didn't know. And as far as justice goes, justice was served because enough information wasn't provided. They didn't pull the trigger, but at the same time, I already knew the verdict was going to be this. That's why I put my energy into focusing on the overall.
The defense here said that the wife was clueless about the husband's attack plan. The defense said that she was a mother, not a monster. Would you agree with that characterization?
I don't agree with clueless. I think we're in a relationship with anybody. We know them better than anybody else does. Even if they try to withhold things, I think there's certain things as a woman and certain things as a mother and wife that she would know about the person that you're dating. So I don't agree with clueless. I don't agree that she was a victim like they tried to make it seem, but I do believe there's some things that she did know and there's something that she didn't know. Were they able to prove that? No. So I'm really not surprised by the verdict.
You have a sophisticated sense of that burden of proof for prosecutors, that it's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, not guilt just if we think someone may have known something, and you're articulating it very, very well. Let's talk a little bit about your story. You were in the club. You were there when the shots rang out. You wound up in a bathroom, as I understand it. Do you mind telling us just some of your story?
Well, that night, I was actually on my best friend's family vacation, so I was invited to go as a guest. And that night, we decided to go out, have fun, just to celebrate. It was our first night out in Orlando. We randomly picked this club. It was nothing else besides random. We got there, we had an amazing time. It was awesome, and we really danced the entire night away. Up until the moment when we were getting ready to leave, that's when the gunshots started firing off. So imagine having the best time of your life and then everything just being shattered and taken from you.
And you wound up getting stuck in this bathroom. You heard the gunshots going off. You heard screaming. And you, from what I understand, heard the 911 call that the shooter himself placed to try to tell authorities why he opened fire.
I did.
That must have been absolutely shocking and difficult. And does it stick with you?
It sticks with me only because the way the media kind of played it was not really talking directly about what he said on the phone versus creating a rhetoric that seemed most trendy. And I really I didn't agree with the way the media depicted everything. I don't think they gave the whole story. So that's the only thing I'm iffy about when it came to that phone call. They really didn't give any information from that phone call on what he said exactly.
Well, I'll give you a chance to set the record straight right here. What should people know about that? You were in the room when that call was placed.
I was in the room when that call was placed. And even me looking at the evidence of him like saying that this, and the evidence pointed to it being a random attack, he said out of his mouth that he was doing this for a specific reason to avenge the people of his country. He said, I'm from ISIS. He said, I'm doing this for my country. Tell America to stop bombing my country. I don't know if he was deranged at the time of what he said, but it's just what he said was never explicitly said into the media. It was never really brought up. It was kind of just brushed over. And a new rhetoric came about it being a gay nightclub, and I totally get that. Yes, it was. Why would he choose Pulse? Maybe it's the same reason why we chose Pulse. It was a random club. I don't know. But it's just that phone call was never vividly expressed in the media, and that's the only thing that I just didn't like.
We have a lot of questions about this case. 49 people died that night. Ultimately, you were rescued. You had to be brought out of the building by the SWAT team. I know that you had an emotional reunion with some of the doctors who worked to save you. How do you put it all into perspective? What stands out the most if we're to learn a lesson from this?
If we were to learn a lesson from Pulse, it would be that there's really things in this world that we can't explain. And there's people who do things that we can't explain, but it's our job and it's our responsibility. Even looking at Parkland, it's our job to look for those warning signs and to say something when we see them. If his wife saw something, if she felt something, if she sensed something, it was her duty to report that. It was her duty to say something, to potentially save 49 lives. Should she be on trial? Should she have been on trial for that? That's up to for many people. But I think right now we just need to focus on healing. And we need to focus on wrapping our arms around people who are still struggling from that event. Then there's still events that continuously go on, Las Vegas, Parkland. Like, we still have other situations that we have to wrap our arms around people. And I think we're forgetting about the healing aspects of these situations when we get lost in debates and arguments and evidence. There's still people that are hurting right now.
Well, certainly there's a trial in a court of law, and that's one sense of justice. And then how the soul and the spirit heals is another sense of justice as well. And we talk about this with so many people who are survivors or who are family members of those who have lost their lives in events that are just so tragic. And we grapple with them as a nation, and we try to make sense of them from a justice perspective here, but we're certainly not blind to that other side of these cases as well. I'm wondering, patients, we have to take a break in a couple of seconds. Is it possible that you'd be able to stick around on the back side of this and talk a little bit more?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. We are going to take a quick break here on the Law and Crime Network. Again, we're talking about the acquittal today of the wife of the Pulse nightclub shooter. That verdict came down in a federal court. The wife was acquitted of all charges related to that case. We'll be back with more with Patience Carter when we come back here on Law and Crime. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching Law and Crime Live, and thanks again for those of you joining us on the Crime and Investigation Network this week. We're speaking with Patience Carter, who is one of the survivors of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida that killed 49 people. The reason we're speaking with her today is because the wife of the shooter, her name is Noor Salman, she was acquitted on all federal charges related to this shooting. Some of those charges included accusations that the wife lied to the FBI about her alleged knowledge of whether or not her husband was going to act out. Patience, we still have you on the line, and we were talking before the break about moving forward as a nation and healing. You went through a lot of trauma, a huge traumatic event that you had to heal from. The person who joined you going into the club that night was not among the survivors.
So there's two people that I entered the club with that night. One was my best friend at the time, and her cousin, Akira Murray, who didn't make it out that night. And that's always a touchy subject because I feel like there's so many different ways that night could have went, but at the end of it, she's not here. So
I know that life moves on, and part of the reason I wanted you to stick around is for this. I understand that you've recently become engaged in a big way, and you shared some of the footage of that engagement with us. I took a quick look at it, and it was a big sports stadium. So this might be one of the most public proposals out there. And our viewers are looking at it right now. So, you know, you talked about moving forward, and this is a big way that we move forward. So now, when I proposed to my wife, it was a private affair. What goes through the mind of someone who is popped the question in an athletic event?
Well, you know, that was definitely extremely shocking, but it happened in Florida, and it gave me a whole new memory to just be happy about when it comes to Florida. So I'm grateful that he went through all that trouble to do that just for me. He said it took over a month to plan, so I'm like, wow, okay.
Well, yeah, so who's the lucky man? You didn't tell us that you said yes, but I'm assuming it based on the fact that you sent us the footage.
Yeah, I did. In the video, it's hard to see because I'm like super in shock. All I could do was nod my head, but his name is Alex Murray, and he's actually the brother of Akira Murray who didn't make it that night. I
heard that. So in essence, this tragedy will run in the family, but as you said, you know, life moves on, and we find ways to pick up with our lives, and look at the happiness right there. You both look very happy. And when's the wedding? Has a date been set yet?
A date hasn't been set just yet. I'm still trying to process the fact that I'm just like engaged right now, but definitely looking forward to the future. And that's why I didn't even want to just focus on the negative of the situation, because I just want people to know that you can just release and let go and move on. Because if you hold your closure inside that verdict, then you're never going to heal.
Yes, exactly. Good lessons. As you move your advocacy forward, you're well-spoken, you're a student, you've written about this. What's next for you?
Well, I'm actually currently finishing this project called Survive and Live. It's a book that I've been working on with the literary agency out of New York. I can't wait for the world to read it, because during this current climate, it's everything that I've been saying and more, and I'm just stressing it more and more and more. As more things happen, especially Parkland, people are getting lost. The people, the humanistic side of everything is getting lost in these debates, getting lost in gun control, getting lost in terrorism. And there's survivors like me who have these moments to themselves where we need somebody to reach out to us and make sure that we're okay.
Well, I would certainly love to read what you have written once that point comes, so make sure that I know, because I'll add it to my reading list.
Yeah.
Okay, and congratulations again on the engagement. Patience Carter, one of the survivors of the Pulse nightclub shooting where 49 died. Thank you so much for joining us on Law and Crime this afternoon. And as I said, congratulations on the next steps in your life.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, let's break this down a little bit. Allura, Stephanie, I think that this is a great life lesson. We hear about these tragedies, and we sit here and we try to make sense of them legally, but yet so many people who go through these situations can move on, and that's touching to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was really inspired by what Patience Carter said, because what meant something to me was that the very first thing she said, the very first reaction she had to this verdict was, listen, we cannot get bogged down in this. We have to move forward. We have to heal. And we cannot obsess over the fact that this woman wasn't convicted. And I think that that really is a very important lesson.
Yeah, very important lesson. And it's amazing how someone so young can be so wise, and the fact that she went through such a traumatic event, but at the end of the day now she can look back at that and see something positive come from it. She's now engaged to her friend's brother, and I just wish them the best, and I love the positivity that I saw from her, and it's something that nobody can take away from them.
Yeah, it's a case that ended in an acquittal here. You know, you got charges that somebody allegedly knew that the attack was, quote, close. This is what the FBI was alleging along with federal prosecutors here. At one point, there was an allegation that the wife knew from the husband, quote, this is my target. Well, you know, I can understand the natural judicial reaction from prosecutors to try to attach liability to allegations like that.
Yeah, I think the prosecution here is understandable, especially given the circumstances of this underlying crime. But this is absolutely one of those times where it's sort of a tale of two entirely different narratives. We had the prosecution narrative that was that this woman, Noor Salman, was you know, a co-conspirator and helped plan and was evil and had it, she was involved in this planning, which is awful. We have the defense narrative, which was that she has indications that she has a very low IQ, that she was treated really as property of her husband, that she was the victim of domestic violence, and that she was really a victim here. Those are such conflicting, competing narratives that it's sort of hard to know what to make of it now.
You know, the first charge that she was charged with was, I think it was aiding and abetting. And one thing that we have to remember is that aiding and abetting not only requires proof that she knew about that her husband planned the crime, but also that she intentionally associated with or contributed with the offense. And I don't think that the prosecution was really able to prove that. And I have to agree with Allura. There are two sides of the spectrum here. One side that she may have done it, and the other side that she may have been, a victim in a sense as well.
Yeah, without knowing more really about what was actually going on with this woman, on one hand, justice really may have been served by this acquittal. So, I think we have to take patience's lesson. We have to look at this from a legal standpoint and say we didn't have enough evidence for a conviction, and that's just the way it is, and accept it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Stephanie, because look, I mean, aiding and abetting usually is a charge that's reserved for people who clearly try to get in cahoots with one another, and to try to apply that to a husband and wife situation just opens up a can of worms that I'm not sure we want to deal with. Every time a husband or a wife gets in trouble with the law, do we automatically charge the partner who lives under the same roof with that person?
Very, very true. I think part of the thing that the prosecution was looking at was the text message exchange between herself and her husband on that evening. She may have made some attempts to cover up some things. This is by the prosecution, but it could have been interpreted in so many different ways. Many
different ways. Well, we're going to continue our review of the Tex McIver case when we come back here on the Law and Crime Network. We're just wrapping up our discussion of the Pulse nightclub acquittal from earlier today.